Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, coming to you live from another hotel, this one in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Today's question comes from Karen, and Karen asks, how would you advise people to get the most out of their lessons or clinics that they might take? That, to me, that's a very interesting question. It's a great question, and I'm always thinking about ways that I can help my students to learn more. So I've got some tips for everybody on how you can get the most out of a clinic or a lesson that you might take. So tip number one is do your homework. What I mean by this is learn about the instructor that you're going to be riding with, or the clinician that you're going to be riding with. Who are they? What's their background? What are their general philosophies? In order, or as a way to help with this, maybe read if they've got articles that are published. Watch if they've got videos out there. Check out their social media pages, things like that. Learn as much as you possibly can about that instructor and their take so that you can be prepared coming into that lesson or clinic. Now, that's going to help us roll into tip number two. Have a plan or a list of questions. As a coach, as a teacher, as an instructor, I can tell you one of my favorite things to see is somebody walk into the arena with a list of questions that they pull out of their pocket, or with a list of topics that they would like to touch on. Now, if you're in a clinic, you may or may not be able to touch on all of the things that you have or that you hope to have covered during your time with that coach or with that instructor, depending on the format of the clinic, the topics, that sort of thing. But if you go in there with a plan and with a list, it doesn't even have to be written down. If you have the list in your head even, although writing it down does help, if you have that list ahead of time, it's going to help you and the instructor get the most out of that session, okay? So this also rolls into tip number three. Be flexible and listen before interjecting. A lot of times I'll have students talk about a list of things that they want to do, and then we'll say, well, my way of teaching private lessons especially is to say, well, go ahead and ride around, show me what you've got going for you. You might have a list of things that you want to touch on, or you might have specific questions, and as your instructor is watching and seeing what's playing out with you and your horse, there might be some other things that you need to step back and take care of. You've got to maybe trust your instructor in this case to take you to maybe the root of the challenge that you're having. And sometimes it can seem like you're taking a side road or an alternate route to get to the answers or to solve the problems that you're having with your horse. So while you do need to have a plan and maybe have a list of questions, you also need to be flexible. That's going to be really important. And so then tip number four, you're going to want to remove your ego, and hopefully this will help you to remove your nerves. There's a lot of times riders will show up in clinics and they'll be concerned that maybe their horse isn't going to be on his best behavior in that situation. To which I always say, great, I want him to be on his worst behavior in a clinic, because we can't solve a problem if it doesn't show up. Now, of course, I don't want him to be on his worst behavior. Usually I just say that to kind of change the mind or change the state that the rider's in that moment. But it's really important, remove the ego, remove the nerves, remove as much of that as you possibly can so that you can be more open and receptive to the learning that's going to come from the instructor and from your horse. If you go in there with your ego inflated, or if you go in there with a ton of nerves involved, your horse is not going to be as receptive to you. You're not going to be as receptive to your horse, and neither one of you are going to be as receptive as you could be to the instructor. Okay? Now, how about follow-up? Follow-up is really important to me. So after the clinic or the lesson, tip number five, take copious notes. If you're like me, I'm kind of a nerd. After every lesson I take, I sit down with a notebook. I have special notebooks dedicated to the lessons that I take, and I go crazy taking notes. Even if it's things that I already know or things that are part of my daily ride, I take notes about what I did and what was going on. That's helpful for me. I can look back on that the next time I ride with that instructor or that coach. I can look back on that when I ride with other coaches, as well as I can also look back on that during my rides in between sessions, my private rides, personal rides, that sort of thing. Additionally, tip number 6, you're going to want to replay your ride in your head. That's just a great way to help you stay focused. Think about what happened, replay it in your head, relive that experience so that, you know, when you have little challenges or little breakthroughs, you can kind of see those, feel those again in your head so that you can hopefully recreate your successes with your horse in your rides following. Tip number 7, this one I think is maybe one of the most important ones. Practice what you did and follow up with your instructor. I can't tell you how many times I ask students, check in with me, let me know about your progress. Probably every student I work with, I ask them to follow up with me, maybe with a video or with, you know, just a little message. Let me know how it's going. And I get a lot of students, and I love reading their messages. I get a lot of students that'll send me messages letting me know how they're doing, sending me little video clips about how they and their horse are progressing. So hopefully you find these tips helpful for you. So tip number 1, do your homework. Number 2, have a plan or a list of questions. Number 3, be flexible and listen before interjecting. Tip number 4, remove your ego or your nerves as much as possible. Tip number 5, take copious notes after. Replay it in your head. That's tip number 6. And tip number 7, practice what you learned or what you worked on and follow up with that instructor. Hopefully those are going to help you to get as much as possible out of every lesson or clinic that you take. If you found this video helpful, insightful, please, kind of help us raise the level of horsemanship around the country, around the world by sharing this video with some of your friends. Leave us some comments, questions in the comment section below if you'd like. Question for you, question of the day. If you could ride in a clinic or lesson with anybody, who would it be? Share that with us in the comment section below. I'm really looking forward to seeing your answers. Don't forget, gang, we're getting lots of questions through our email and through our social media accounts. Please, you keep sending your questions. That's going to fuel the content for these videos. Thanks so much, guys.